Hello, beautiful traders. Today is Monday, December 28th, 2020, and people have been asking me to make a video about point of control, a little more in depth, and how I use that. So we'll look at a couple different setups here. But first, let me tell you that any of the trades I take are going to be based on a higher time frame. So the daily, weekly, monthly, I'm looking for key levels in my strat setup there. With Apple, what I was looking at, or what I would have been looking at, I didn't trade Apple today, is that pre-market, it was up in this 134-ish range. And so for me, gaps don't really scare me in terms of thinking that negates a strat setup. What I do look for though, 90% of the time you're going to see that a stock that gaps up will come back and retest to one degree or another, that gap. And how far back into that gap it goes tells you its weakness or its strength. So let me explain that a little bit better. What we see here is that Thursday Apple closed right around 132. Today it opened around 134, so a 2-point gap on a 134 stock. That's a good sized gap. And so had I been marking up my chart, I would have marked up the previous day's highs and possibly the highs of this inside candle, and maybe the close. Like if it was really weak, maybe it would get all the way back down to the close. And then I would have kind of looked at it and said, this looks like a long setup based on pre-market. Where would my targets be assuming price goes up? So I'm looking left, we got a high here. You really could have even marked out this high as a possibility. And then kind of the previous all-time highs if she wanted to make a run for it. So I got my levels marked, I sync them to the charts, and then I also mark out oftentimes the highs and the lows of the pre-market range. Let me just make sure that that is synced here. I don't need it on the daily, but it's all right. Okay, so I have the 15-second up just so you can see how I use it. I'm going to do a replay on the 5, but I'm just going to show you, had I been watching the 15-second, what I'm looking for to enter long. And this is subtle, but I like the 15-second because it can give me an entry oftentimes sooner than the 5-minute or even the 1-minute. So what I notice out of the gate here on the 15-second is that we have a high, which is right at those pre-market highs. We've got a low, which is right at the highs from Thursday. So a high, a low, a higher high. I mean, it's barely higher, but that's still a higher high, and a higher low. So my entry on the 15-second would be on this 222 reversal right here above this wick. And then she's off to the races. So I just want to show you why I have the 15-second up. And then we'll replay the 5-minute chart here with the volume profile so you can see how that changes. Typically, if I'm looking to take a trade based on the volume profile at the open, I do want it at an extreme. And oftentimes, if it's up near the top of that pre-market range, and we can see it was lower earlier, and that's a nice range, it's going to sell off. The only thing I don't like pre-market is for it to really take a hit at the open. I typically see these little dots, which are developing point of control, and this line, which is point of control, above price, and we're not seeing that here. All this means is you see how this gray area is called the value area. So that is the price range between 133 and 134ish, where most of the pre-market transactions have occurred. And then this black line that's sticking out, that's where the highest concentrations within that have occurred. So developing point of control kind of gives you a preview as that point of control is changing. And so in this case, because we don't see either developing point of control or point of control above price, I'm not necessarily looking for any kind of big sell-off at the open. So let's hit play and see how this moves. There we go, really quickly. Whoop. Slow that speed down. So just based on the action that you see here and the fact that we kind of went straight up with the 5-minute chart, this may give you an idea why it's somewhat difficult here to get into that trade. I mean, you could have taken it over the wick of that 3, but it's just so clear for me on the 15-second where a decent entry would be. And even though that 15-second entry, it's a little bit below that point of control, the fact that it hit that high from Thursday and then bounce right off and create at a higher low is all I need. In fact, you know, how did trends start? Uptrend start. A high, a low, a higher high, a higher low. That's it. So to me, that really helps with entries. I struggle more because you really didn't get a good triangle layout until we're up here. And let's just keep playing to see how price moves, with our main target being up at 137.90. Let's run this a little bit quicker. You see here it comes down and tests those pre-market highs. Speed this up a little bit more. You can see right here how the volume profile is changing, and there it is moving below price. So I like the fact that it's laddering up with price. It's showing there's still a lot of people willing to come in and buy. Then I want to stop it right here. Actually, let me play a couple more frames just to see. Oops. Sorry. So what you notice here on the 5-minute chart, see how much volume dropped off here? We have exhausted the number of buyers and price starts to reverse. And that's dramatic compared to how much price action was going on right here. For me, had I been trading this, I don't really like sticking around all day, so I would have most likely gotten out right here when I saw the volume drop back to this area, that kind of like little gap where, rather than sit around and wait. But there's an example of how you might use price action in a setup that maybe isn't my ideal out of the open, but you can still see how that volume profile comes into play. So next we're going to look at Tesla. And this is a trade I did take last Thursday, and let me show you what I was looking at on the daily, because obviously that candle hadn't formed yet. But here we've got a nice hammer candle. So then the next day we've basically got a high, a low, a higher high, a higher low. So I was looking for basically a 2-2 reversal back up based on the fact that we had a high, a low, a higher high, and a higher low. And so I will look at pre-market to determine what daily levels it's most likely to hit, and marked off the close from the 22nd, and then the open from the 22nd, it looks like. So let me get rid of that one. It's not as important. What I would have wanted to do, sorry about this, is actually mark that close. Okay. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Of course, I don't know exactly what price is going to do, but I can look at pre-market and get a feel for where we're at. And just so you can see this a little bit better, I'm going to mark the pre-market volume profile here, kind of the range, get the bottom of that range. And then I'm also going to back it up to the 24th and the 15-second, just so you can get an idea. Let me remove these drawings, and then I'm going to sync this, both these levels, to all charts. Okay. So let me just show you on the 15-second, and then we'll look at the 5-minute and kind of do the replay of the volume profile. But I just want you to see what I saw. You know, we have an open. So this is our low, a high, but then we get a lower high. So there is no definitive uptrend out of the gate. And in fact, you'll see it kind of failed these highs from the previous day. It didn't quite get there. So I'm patient and I wait and I watch what price is going to do. And what I notice is, and I drew this line just because that's kind of the low right here, is it comes down and kind of bases right here. It tried to go lower, got sucked up, and from there starts to move up. I also noticed that the close from a couple days ago is right here, and you'd be surprised how many times price will bounce off of previous day's highs or previous day's close if we're in a strong uptrend. So once we base out, that's my new low, my high, got a higher low, and now I want a higher high above this close. And so I've got my higher high right here, closes above that level. But now I need to wait for a triangle layout. And so what I notice is price kind of went straight up without a good triangle layout, and we're fairly far away from a trend line that you can kind of see with your eyes. Or I often will have the 20 EMA, or sometimes on a 15-second it's actually easier to use a 50. And I notice that price is way far away from the moving average. Now, I know a lot of people don't like moving averages. I don't base my trades off of moving averages. I base them off a strat signal on the daily time frame. However, you'll find that when price, especially on the shorter time frame, starts to drift, well, really on any time frame, away from the moving average, that's pretty far away. There's a big gap there. It's better to wait for a triangle layout that pulls back to the moving average, and that helps you avoid taking the trade long here and then turning around and getting stopped out. So I wait here, and this is even a higher low still. We're right at the moving average. And I wait and I wait, and then here's where my entry is. I have a little inside candle. We're over point of control, so my entry goes here. My stop is going to go right here below that green candle. And I almost get stopped out, but then she takes off. So let's look at the same trade on the 5-minute chart with the volume profile on. So I'm just going to hit play. Down and tests. It's the bottom of that range. It's kind of, let me slow this down a little bit. So one thing I want you to notice, see how there's a lot of volume here and that volume pulls way back. You notice that price takes a little dip here. That's where I would have been out. And again, just to go back to the daily, as price is moving, sometimes before I'll mark out where my targets are. Oftentimes I can kind of see where I think it would go. So based on where this opened, I would have looked left, probably had this as my primary target, and then that close, and then potentially the wick of that candle. And we can see it went up, I'm sorry, that open, it went up to that open and then pulled back a little bit. So let's just sync that, both these levels to all charts. So for me, I'm out right here. I see that the volume profile is scaling back. I see that we hit that first target. I see that we've had a nice run from 640 to 658. That's almost 20 points. And your entry here, I feel like it's just harder sometimes to see on the bigger time frames, but you could have gotten in right above this inside candle. Again, price goes, tests the bottom of that range, starts coming up. Right here, we're above those pre-market highs. And as soon as we see price dip, it goes above point of control and bypasses both pre-market highs and this inside candle, you're in. You even could have waited here above the wick of that inside candle and gotten in. You would have had to ride through a little bit of a pullback, but then you hit your target up here at 658. So both of those setups, as far as pre-market volume profile goes, are maybe a little bit more complex than you'll sometimes see. But the thing I liked about Tesla here is it did stick near the bottom of that range, and there was, if we kind of go back near the pre-market, we do see there was a nice kind of cutout shape here indicating that there was going to be room for price to at least move back up here. We're above point of control. That's too far away for me to take a trade out of the gate. So again, I kind of wait until that sets up. I mean, these trades, after you watch this for a while, will kind of slap you in the face, but the moving parts are the levels from the higher time frame. Oftentimes the daily chart, if there's weekly and monthly levels that are close, I'll mark those too. Where price is on that pre-market volume profile if it's at an extreme, either the very low of the range or the very high end of the range, and where it's at in relation to point of control. But I hope this helps. I will try to make maybe a couple of these videos to walk you through how I see it. And over time, as you watch it too, it could become a really useful tool in addition to the strat setups. Thanks so much for watching.